I wanted to go into every practice with a purpose, and knowing like what I wanted to get out of it. For me, it was like pushing my body so that I was getting super comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like I needed to feel exhausted every single day so I could get familiar with that feeling so that when I felt it in the match, I wasn't afraid of it. And I didn't like get my heart rate up and elevated because I was nervous that I wasn't going to be able to perform under these circumstances.
Welcome to Iron Summit, where we cover topics about health, fitness, and general performance through the eyes of former elite Division I wrestlers.
Nice. All right. Special guest this week, Mike McMullan, four-time All-American, Ironman finisher. You can see the bikes in the background, academic weapon, and he's in the Northwestern Athletics Hall of Fame. What's up, Mike?
Nothing. It's pretty cool when you say it all like that.
It sounds pretty sweet, and there's a lot more I could have said. I was keeping it brief.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So first things first, before we get it digging into your life, Mike, I feel like we all got to talk about the whole coaching situation that just happened at Oklahoma State. And I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to come last week. On
yeah, you knew something.
Something's happening. Yeah, look, actually, I was out at the trials a couple weeks ago at State College. Obviously, like what Penn State has done has been incredible. And when you think they're phenomenal, they seem to outperform what they previously did. And this year, the NCAA was an incredible testament to that. And then you see that performance at the Olympic trials with how many guys from the New Line Wrestling Club were, competing for spots. Like, I mean, it was at Penn State. It just like had my brain racking. Like, how is this all sustainable? Like, how do they keep this whole thing together? Like, how do they manage all of these egos and personalities? Like, it sounds like they have a great culture, but there's a lot of talent there. And like, is Aaron Brooks ever wrestling David Taylor? Like, when's the last time they wrestled in practice? Like, all these questions were just running through my head leading the trials. So then obviously, like seeing this news this week, it was like, okay, like I was maybe on to something because like this bad in my head. So look, I think it's really cool. Obviously, Oklahoma State is a phenomenal brand with a great history in college wrestling, and they've had some strong performers over the past couple of years, but the program's not what it was 15, 20 years ago. So I think having, one of the sharpest, freshest, like most recognizable individuals within our sport going there, it's a young hire, it's a big swing. You've seen this work at professional sports in some instances. You've also seen it fail in some instances, but I like the approach of just really shaking things up and breaking the paradigm, and taking a big gamble and making a bet. And if it pays off in 3 to 5 years, like it's going to be great and everyone's going to be really happy. And if it doesn't, like it's kind of like no harm, no foul, because you're going to get really strong candidate pool for the next go around when that job opens up. So
Yeah.
I think it's really cool, and love seeing the potential for another powerhouse to come back and challenge for a top spot.
Yeah, it was cool seeing like a athletic director take wrestling super seriously too, and I think that obviously David's going to have some good. I bet Jimmy pops over there. I don't know if he will or not, but his brother-in-law, I know he's pretty tight at Penn State, but you never know. And then it sounded like Dayton Fix is probably going to step up and coach too. So it'll be interesting. I think it's good for college wrestling. Like you said, I think it's going to shake up a lot of things.
I think I saw, maybe this is wrong, but I saw Gilman might be going there too.
Oh, okay. Wow. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I don't know, but I do think it's
who knows? But if that happens, like talk about like Oklahoma State, Iowa rivalry, like just love everything about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. It's like one of the biggest shakeups since Kale went to Penn State. And
totally, yeah.
Look how that turned out.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of the Twitter warriors being like, "How could he like possibly do this?" Like, turn his back. And it's like, you guys not remember like what happened?
Remember the coach that built your program literally did this.
Yeah, he did the same exact thing.
Like, also, like if you want to coach, it's not like you're going to kick out Kale and put David Taylor in. So like, what do you have a problem with? Like, it's just a branch of Penn State athletes going to coaches at different places. So I don't get that at all.
Yeah. As a wrestling fan, as in the whole, I hope that Oklahoma State become, and everyone wants more parity with Penn State. So as a general wrestling fan, that'd be great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mike. How'd you get into wrestling, man? Obviously, you're a big dude. If I had to do it over, I think I'd probably play football. If I was your size. You were very good at football and lacrosse in high school. You're number one ranked heavyweight coming out of high school, and you have a grandfather that played in the NFL. So, what made you choose wrestling versus these other avenues? Because obviously, super athletic dude. I'm sure you were successful in those other sports. And quite frankly, wrestling. I love wrestling. So that's my caveat to what I'm about to say, but wrestling sucks. Like, why wouldn't you play football or lacrosse if you had that opportunity?
It's a great question. So I started wrestling when I was 5. Didn't have a ton of bargaining power at that point in my life. It's kind of like, what's happening? And we happened to live in the Lehigh Valley, which like we didn't have a wrestling background, and like we just literally hit the jackpot in terms of wrestling talent, wrestling culture, and just wrestling resources in like a pre-smartphone, like pre-YouTube era. So I started doing it, and we were doing it in our little bubble. And then, obviously start to go out to tournaments, you go outside the area and like you see you're having success and and then over time you realize like how, lucky you are where you're living. So that's kind of how I started when I was 5. Like we just signed up. It was like a sport in the area and like just happened to fall into like great wrestling culture. But you're right. I played football as well when I was younger. Ran track and field. I got burnt out at track and field when I was like 9 years old. It was exhausting. Like did it super competitively. And shocking. Like a 9-year-old doesn't like just like running around in circles for like multiple hours a week. And just like being outside for 12 hours like on a weekend. So waiting to run in a circle. So I got burnt out of that pretty quick and then started playing lacrosse in middle school as I was all late to the game there. It was newer in our area. So yeah, had a ton of optionality, did a lot of sports when I was younger. Definitely had some avenues that I could go um, for the college route. Was fortunate enough to have looks for football at some Division One schools that, from an academic perspective, hit the criteria that I was really looking for. Because at the end of the day, like that was most important to me, was making sure I was setting myself up for the next 40, 50 years of professional life beyond sport post graduation. So I had some looks for football. Um, but for me, like, and I definitely could have done it. But I think it's maybe that, like, I was raised Catholic, like maybe it's that Catholic guilt in me that just knowing that like this is the easy option that you're taking, like this is the easy road to go down. Like you're good at this other thing. It sucks. You don't like it all the time. Like you probably never liked it actually at that point in your life. Like why would you like self-select into this like terrible thing when you have like you're going to get the same educational access if you do this other sport? I think it was just like I knew I was good at that point in my life. I was not, until I made the decision to wrestle in college, I was not like the number one kid in the country. I was good, but I wasn't like a perennial like like youth folklore legend or anything like that. um so like I think like I just knew that I had more potential if I like really allocated 100% of my time towards the sport. Um, and felt like I needed to just take that bet and see how far that could get me from a college athletic career standpoint. Just having those internal conversations with myself, like really was a big driving force in me, at least entertaining the thought of wrestling in college. And then visiting Northwestern was, I think to me, just such an awesome opportunity that it really just like drove home the sentiment of, okay, like I should wrestle at college because I wasn't getting recruited Northwestern for football. Most of my recruiting for football was like East Coast, Ivy League, like very like, bubble centric. Northwestern, it was like, okay, like I get to go on a plane and fly to a different time zone. I've never done that before. I'm near a big city in Chicago. Like that's cool. Like that sounds like fun. I want to work in a big city. People make a lot of money in big cities. This is a great academic school. It's in the Big Ten, like all the things we know. So it was that like amalgamation of factors that was just, it was so compelling. I was like, I want this so bad that like, yes, I'll do the sport that I don't like the most, but I feel like I actually have the most potential in. So that was sort of the calculus I did when I was 17. Um, and like obviously it's paid off both from a results perspective competitively, but also like I've gotten to where I wanted to get to in life as well. I don't know how that would have shaken out if I'd gone a different route. So really happy with like how it all turned out.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's crazy having that kind of internal dialogue at 17. Like that's yeah, that's sweet. And just to have that foresight, I guess, to see even if it's maybe not your favorite thing right now, that it's going to be better for you in the long term. And then obviously you like the sport now, but like you said, there's definitely difficult parts of wrestling. Um, was this weird, like growing up with a bunch of siblings? I've met one of your brothers briefly. Shout out to Shot Sled. But you have like 7 or 8 siblings, right? Like, did you wrestle growing up with them? How did that play in your development? And I think being mature with that decision, I bet you had a lot of um,
Yeah.
individual like thoughts being having so many people in your family.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Uh, seven brothers and sisters, big family. Um, so it definitely, I think, in terms of shaping the athletic experience, played a big role because your parents have to manage activities no matter how big your family is. But when you're doing it with that many siblings, you're all going, you're all watching each other, you're all participating. So you're all going through a version of the same experience. So it gets a lot of like minded people around you, um, which helps just elevate your focus and approach to like whatever sport you're doing versus if you were just doing it in a vacuum. At least that was like my experience. So I think that was like a great thing to have as a kid. Um, and then going to high school, like my older brother wrestled, my younger brothers wrestled as well. So wrestling was like a big part of our upbringing and our experience. So like we all got it in terms of like, how we needed to, you know, approach our lives like in the winter months and like how we needed to like get the workout in like the morning of Thanksgiving and like we had to like, get on the mats like the day after Christmas. Like we were all just kind of like, really aligned on that stuff. So I think it helps keep you like keep each other accountable. Surround yourself with like people who are also going through the same experience. Yeah, I think it definitely was beneficial. I think also just being in a large family with seven brothers and sisters, like I think it puts a lot of pressure on you to like be an individual contributor and like not have to like be reliant on the resources that your parents are providing because like it's hard enough to raise like two kids like financially, let alone eight.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, look, I have this really unique skill, this really unique opportunity. Like I owe it to like them and I owe it to myself to like just go all in and see how far I can take this thing because if it goes well, like it's going to give me a lot more autonomy and flexibility to like make decisions in life and also like take pressure off of them to have to worry about like, 12.5% of like their kids. And they can just like focus on the rest of the group if they need to. So like, I think that was part of it as well.
I know. So in high school, you went to Wyoming Sam. Take us through kind of what that was like making the transition from Easton to Wyoming Sam.
Totally. So yeah, as a Lehigh guy, like you, like that area is so unique. And I grew up in the Easton School District and was on pathways to go to Easton High School, which I graduated high school in 2010, so it was like early 2000s. And at that point in time, Easton had won like four consecutive like AAA state championships in Pennsylvania, which is like that's the hardest. That's the big conference, and Pennsylvania is the hardest state. It's like you get it. They had a
Yeah.
really good program, and they had a great feeder program. Like we're the number one middle school program in the state. Like us in Central Mountain, where like the Alton brothers went to high school. So like I was on track to go to a great wrestling program, but there was this unique opportunity to think about an alternative path where I went to boarding school, and I obviously went to like this school, Wyoming Seminary, which everybody knows now as like a top five perennial program. But at the time, like it was like, literally just like this terrible wrestling team. Like they were so bad. Like nothing against people who were there before me. Like there were a couple good guys, but like they placed like probably like 70th or 80th at the national prep tournament, which is like
Wow.
there's like 5 good teams at the national tournaments. Like
Yeah.
they were not good. And like the whole shtick was there's this like massive desire to go to Blair Academy because that was like the only really successful private school or boarding school engine that was working at the time. And a lot of those kids, like if you were really over indexed on wrestling, you'd go to Iowa. But if you're like pretty good at wrestling, but also care about school, like you go to like a lot of the IBs. So people saw it as like a this fail safe motion to like get to one of those schools. So we were like pretty heavily considering going that route. But we built relationships with this guy, John Gordon, who is the dean at Wyoming Seminary and the wrestling coach through our club circuit. And he was like, hey, I want to like bring people in to my boarding school, which is like in Pennsylvania. And it's like literally like the same thing as Blair Academy, but in Pennsylvania and like slightly more urban. Like, let's just do what Blair Academy is doing. And like, let's get a couple kids every year that like don't get into Blair or like there's not enough space for them to start at Blair or whatever. And like let's just see where we can take this thing. So that was the impetus to go to STEM. And I went up there in 8th grade and wrestled on the high school team. And we were better when I was there my first year, but over time we got a couple more kids every year to the point where my senior year we were a top 5 team in the country, lost to Blair by like a point in the duel, like we're neck and neck. And obviously now they're off and running as like a consistently good program.
So you were one of the first bricks in building that Wyoming Seminary program that is a national
Yeah.
powerhouse today.
I mean, like, look, I'm not going to say like I like there were a lot of us. Like, there was probably a group of 6 or 7 that first year that I think really helped. Like, I mean, we didn't have a full lineup. Like, we had like folks from boarding school who like wanted to like get gym credit who like were big enough to build certain weight classes where we didn't have guys like wrestling. And we just didn't want to get pinned. Like it was definitely like an experience, but yeah, it was me and like a group of like probably 6 or 7 others that were the first big wave to really make that concerted effort to like recruit, go to the good tournaments and like try to make a dent.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, Mike, also want to talk a little bit too about obviously heavyweight. You had a unique experience, and we've talked about it with Max kind of had a similar too with having to gain weight and whatnot. But I think the first time I actually met you in person, obviously watched you growing up, but like at a summer camp, it was maybe my sophomore year of high school at Northwestern. I remember asking you like how much you weigh, and I think you told me like 254 pounds, and uh, just like I don't know, we had a brief conversation. And I'm like, dude, this dude's huge. But then, knowing you after your career too, and how you were able to drop a bunch of weight and kind of change your body type completely, it seems to me that like there was a big challenge in putting on a lot of weight. Can you talk us through kind of what that looked like for you? And obviously, you competed with some big heavyweights. You needed a certain amount of mass, but you were also super athletic while you were doing it. So how'd you play that line? How'd you think about gaining weight, and what made you ultimately decide to, kind of take that weight off once you were done competing?
I also want to know how big were you in high school? 'Cause you wrestled heavyweight, but how big were you, and how much bigger did you have to get for Division One wrestling?
Yeah, let's go through it. So my freshman year of high school, I weighed about 180. I wrestled 189. Sophomore year, I was about 200, wrestled 189. So I was cutting weight that year. Um, Junior year, I was like honestly pretty over wrestling. It was like I'm gonna play football. Like this is um so I started to get big because like football is so like size oriented for recruiting purposes.
Right.
So like through that, I was like 230. And I've been having the conversation with the wrestling coach like in the winter. I was like, yeah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. He's like, dude, please, can you just do like a couple tournaments? And I was like, fine, I'll do a couple tournaments. Like East of the East, like national prets. We had like the duel against like Blair and St. Ed's. And my brother was our 215 pounder. And like I was pretty far away from 189. So I was like, I guess I'm gonna do heavyweight. So like that was how I got to heavyweight. It was like kind of a unplanned route to get there. Um, and it was like working. So I was this is pretty nice. Like these guys are pretty bad technically. They're not good at shooting. They actually don't know how to shoot at all. They're very bad at sprawling and like they hand fight, but like they don't really hand fight. They just kind of like hug each other and like hope nothing bad happens. So like this is pretty cool. Like I like this sport's easier than like the other wrestling I was doing. So That was like my experience at heavyweight junior year. Made the decision to wrestle my senior year. And it was about 230 my senior year of high school. When I got to college, um, I was obviously focusing on wrestling the entire time. And college preseason and college wrestling practices were obviously like pretty hard. And I came at about 230, 235, but it was like pretty soft. So very quickly, I lost like 15, 20 pounds because it was just so intense. So I was like 215 my redshirt year. So that was an issue, obviously. Dropping
Mhm.
matches my redshirt year to guys I shouldn't lose to because I'm massively undersized and the technique is obviously better in college. So did like a lot of concerted effort on diet, not like in a scientific, like cool nutritional way. Dude, I got to go to Jewel Osco and I got to buy like $200 in groceries a week and I got to eat all of it because like I need to be like viable against like these like Midwestern farm people that I have to wrestle for
You
like,
missed the Nona Joe's era, man. Like my sophomore year of college, we got athlete dining. That would have helped you out a lot.
yeah, dude,
Yeah,
that sounds great.
ridiculous.
Um,
I
yeah,
like that I appreciate, I like that your budget for food was literally a budget. It was a financial thing. It wasn't like calories. It was like, I got to eat $200 worth of food.
but like, what can I get? Like, okay, I got some Velveeta. I got some like Bob Evans mashed potatoes that like definitely aren't good for me. Like it was just like, yeah, exactly. Like, so I was eating, I tried to be, diligent about like how much I was spending on food. And like, then I had my routine throughout the day, as like I think a lot of great wrestlers in college do. Like, you kind of have that motion. And for me, it was like I knew what I was going to eat for breakfast, had like a mid morning snack, had like a lunch, had like a pre practice snack, had like my dinner, and then I had like my before I go to bed snack thing. So I was putting in like a lot. Like, I didn't calorie count, but it's probably like I would assume like 4 or 5,000 calories a day. Um,
Yeah.
and just doing that to obviously like build size in the off season, but then to maintain throughout the actual season because of the frequency of workout and stuff like that, and just the fickleness of the size that I had. Like, it was better by the time I was a junior senior, but it's not like in the other weights where it's like you know pretty dense and
Were you
like,
focused on strength training during that too, or was that just get as many calories and just try not to lose weight
but
during
yeah,
the season?
I was very focused on strength training. So we had some great lifting coaches when I was at Northwestern. We also had a psychotic 197 pounder, Alex Polizzi, who fights Bellator, I believe, right now, or PFL.
I wrestled him once at Fila Juniors. It was not fun.
Yeah. So he's a great friend. And but he is like an animal in the weight room, like a cardio machine, just like a raw like athlete. And like we showed up and he was putting up a lot, like more weight than me in many areas. And I was like, this kid's a freak, first and foremost. Second of all, like I can't let this happen. Like I need to at least be like on the same page as him because like I'm a heavyweight. Like I should be like lifting the most. So we actually had a really good relationship where like we both I think made so much progress strength wise, and like really took it seriously. Where we were like in my heyday, like I was Zerger squatting like like 4.5 plates. Like I was doing like 150-pound dumbbell benches. Like I was doing it right. Like so, and it was like a path to get there. But Polizzi was like a big part of that. And obviously, like the strength coaches when I was at Northwestern were big parts of that as well. But yeah, it was like I was locked in. Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome. So were you what made you ultimately decide? So you finished college wrestling and then, I see you and I'm like, you don't look like the Mike I saw my sophomore year of high school. What made you decide like, hey, I don't want to stay this big, or was that just your weight kind of naturally came down when you weren't, force feeding like you had to for college?
Yeah. So like I didn't have ownership over my body really at that point in my life. Like
Yeah.
I was going to college. I was getting paid to go to college to wrestle heavyweight. Like so I had to be a viable heavyweight and I had to weigh that much. When that all stopped, I had a little bit more ownership. And yeah, if it was up to me, like I would be eating 5,000 calories a day and like Bob Evans mashed potatoes. So um I made the concerted effort. Like the week after NCAAs my senior year to like really dial it in on diet, really up the ante on cardio, um, and just like see what would happen if I like focus on that for, the, the short term. And that first like 2, 3 months probably dropped like 15, 20 pounds that way. So I was right around like 210. Um, and then started coaching and was still focusing on it, and was still then working out a lot. So I think that like just tweaks in diet over time, still working out a lot, helped me continue that progression down closer to 200. Um, and then yeah, like I recognize that I'm not going to be able to like wrestle people every day. Like there's going to be days where I have to sit down, there's gonna be days where I'm gonna have to travel. Like life's gonna get harder as I get older, and like the better foundation I can set myself up for now to enjoy that as it comes up, I'll just be better off for. So that has driven like a pretty deliberate effort to um, keep the weight off and like operate at like a pretty healthy bound where I'm like between like 190 and 200 probably right now.
That's awesome. One thing, Mike, I want to talk about too that I think is probably like just something I really want to pick your brain about is like you're one of the best wrestlers ever, and you had a great, very decorated career, man. And like the fact that I mean, you go third, second, third, third. I want to talk about your mindset because I think everybody's goal coming into college is to be a national champ, right? And you were like knocking on that door and stayed motivated the whole time and continued to perform. And there's so many athletes that fall off and like once they lose a match on the front side at the national tournament, there's tournaments over and they get beat by somebody else. And you gotta switch your mindset quickly, short memory, and turn around. So how did
Or they
that
forfeit out, or they'll just forfeit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So like how do you think about that? How do you stay motivated and continue to wrestle and perform at a very high level after your dreams were just crushed?
Yeah, it's hard. I fortunate to get the NCAA results I got. I took a different path every single time I went to the tournament. Some paths better than others, and it's hard. And I go to this tournament now and I watch, and you track these kids through the year, and you see the end result, and then I reflect back to like how I did, and I'm just like, this is a really hard tournament. Um, that is so unforgiving. So I think a lot of it is luck, right? It's 3 days out of your entire year.
Mhm.
And the way I thought about it was, look, it's 3 days out of my entire year. Like, I have no idea how I'm going to feel on those 3 days, but I need to do everything I can in the 362 days to at least have like an 80% confidence interval of like how I'm going to feel on those days. So that means I have to live like a very specific way, predictable way, boring way to like prepare myself for that moment. And a lot of people aren't ready to like make that commitment.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them, honestly. Like, unless you feel like you have a shot, like it probably doesn't make sense to do that. And I got my freshman year, like I was good, but it was okay. Like I went into NCAAs, I was seeded 10th. Like, I had like 10 or something losses on the year. Like, like I wasn't gonna get third. And I had a really good tournament and I got third and I beat some good guys. And after that experience, it was like, wow, like, I went through that entire year ranked like between 10 and 20 and I finished third. Like maybe I actually am good enough. Like maybe I can win this tournament. And I think that like just positive reinforcement of result gave me the kick in the butt I needed to like fully shift my mindset to set myself up to potentially win that tournament and make that commitment to like be super prepared and disciplined like every single day. Um, so that was the catalyst. Yeah, I wanted to go into every practice with a purpose, and knowing like what I wanted to get out of it. For me, it was like pushing my body so that I um, was getting super comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like I needed to feel exhausted every single day so I could get familiar with that feeling. So that when I felt it in the match, I wasn't afraid of it, and I didn't like get my heart rate up and elevated because I was nervous that I wasn't going to be able to perform under these circumstances. So, like, that was a goal of mine every single day. Diet was a goal of mine every single day. Predictability and just like feeling like I controlled the outcome of the day was like really important to me in college. And that's just like boring and like not fun and sexy. But I just got like
It's
hypnotized
important though.
with
Yeah.
that mindset. And that's how I conducted my business. Um, and surprise, surprise, like I didn't feel perfect for those 3 days in March, but I had enough like familiarity and like the things that like I knew and that like made me comfortable that I could come back to like help me feel as good as I could feel so that I could perform to my best ability. So I don't know if I answer your question, but like that was like,
I think that's awesome. I think a couple things. One, I love the get comfortable being uncomfortable. I love that quote. And I think that's like um, wrestling in a nutshell a little bit, and why also wrestling transfers to so many other life skills because you do get really comfortable being uncomfortable. But I also would, I'll take I'll counter your point that it's not sexy or exciting living your life that way, because it's in the end, I think it's ultimately it's very difficult and it's much more fulfilling. So rather than flying by the seat of your pants, going to parties when you wanted, hanging out with buddies when you wanted, you made sacrifices and you worked towards a goal, and you ended up achieving something pretty special. So I think
yeah.
that
And
that
for the
is
record,
sexy and
like
cool.
for the record, like I definitely like, had fun in college, like in the off season and stuff like that. But like I still had goals throughout the year. Like, I had like a window for like 2 to 3 months or whatever, where it was like a little bit more lax. But like for the majority of the year, it was like I gotta get my stuff in I know I need to get in. Because if not, like that guilt will fester and like all of that foundation will unravel. And like I'm gonna be further away from where I want to get to, which I know I can get to because like I've been super close. So like why can't I actually like punch through?
Yeah. I like that, Mike. And I think too, um, it seems like even from a very young age, you thought very logically. And basically what I'm hearing is like stack the evidence in your head as to why you can do this. And I think something that I remember just from college, you coached me in college. I remember us having a conversation one day and you were talking about like I think I asked you something along the lines of like, when did you know like you were gonna be good at wrestling? And it was like, you suddenly start proving to yourself, you placed third at Midlands and then you won this tournament. And suddenly like you have this body of work and then it's like, why not me? And so I think it's pretty cool that you were able to, it seems like throughout your career, obviously you achieved stuff during the season, but then you were able to also put that in your mind to help motivate you as like, look, here's all my evidence that I stacked up for why I deserve to be here, and then I think that helped you perform well at the national tournament. And I think a lot of people in those big moments, when you're lacking confidence, you're getting nervous. They don't think about that stack of evidence, and you do a good job of logically being like, no, of course I should be here. This is why I should do this. And I think it showed throughout your career because it's really hard to keep hitting those high levels at the NCAAs like that. And you consistently did it over your whole career.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's I think that's right. And just it reminded me about like when I was coaching and I was recruiting and I would have these high school kids and I'd be like, so what are your goals? What do you want to get out of college? They'd be like,
Four-time NCAA champ.
I want to be a four-time NCAA champ. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you don't. Like, you actually don't want to do that. Like, you're just saying that because you think that's what everybody wants to hear. But like,
Yeah.
let's like actually like stair step some of your expectations a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
maybe you want to
That's
start
such an
five,
important point.
like maybe you want to like place at a college open or like win a college open. Like, and I think like to your point, Deacon, like you just have to like stack that evidence and like that just like so dictates like how your experience is gonna go. And as long as you're like coming out of the gates with like an honest mentality and like good effort, like the chips will fall and like you'll just react and you'll recognize that like this is going the way it needs to go for me or it's not and I need to like course correct and figure out like what I gotta fix.
Well, and by
I
the
think
way,
that,
go ahead, Max.
Sorry. I was just gonna say, I think that's such an important point, and you hit it. Like everyone, when they comes to, I want to be a national champ. I want to be a four-time national champ. But in order to actually progress, you need to have realistic goals. So when you're going through goal setting, to your point, Mike, like you got to like look at what is actually achievable, set a goal for that, and then to your other points, then you have to go to the day-to-day actions that you need to do to achieve that goal. And then once you start achieving that goal, then you can maybe bump the level of goal up, but you can't just start with the, I want to be a national champ, or, we'll get into your professional life, I want to be a billionaire. Like, it doesn't, doesn't work that way. You got to kind of
Yeah.
stack the body of evidence.
I also think it's interesting, like, everybody's in a different spot, because I think at the highest level of wrestling, it's more mental than it is at a lower level. So, like, the first part of your career, maybe like throughout high school and when you were younger, you had to stack the evidence in terms of like technique, conditioning, strength. But then you got to a point of your career where you had to figure out the mental side of it. Um, so I think it's interesting. Like, obviously, you got to have the skills first, but then you got to be able to stay calm in those big moments. And I think just at the national tournament, it's a crazy tournament every year because there's so much mental load on everybody. It's like the guys that can perform well under pressure and mentally break through do well. Um, and then getting out of wrestling a little bit, Mike, what about your Ironman? Like, you did an Ironman. That's insane. You just love
Yeah,
chosen
it is literally
suffering.
insane.
So you love chosen suffering. And so what made you want to do that? On top of, by the way, you weren't just training full time for an Ironman. You have like a career, a wife, like other responsibilities. I think you like to sleep. So how did you do this? What made you want to do it? And can you talk us through kind of your training and what that looked like?
Totally. COVID was a huge factor in all of this. Like, I think a lot of people got into endurance sports during COVID, but yeah, started cycling in 2020, bought a bike kind of 3 months into COVID, was like, I am going crazy. Like, I need to get outside. And started cycling in Chicago, like going up North Shore along the lake, and just really was getting into it. And I always loved running. Um, and let's start to like do longer bike rides, longer runs, because like the COVID days were so boring. There was nothing to do. So I think I was starting to see like the volume go up on both of those ends. And it just had me curious, like, okay, like I've got two of the three things I need for Ironman. Like, what is this actually? How long is this thing again? And is it like, can I actually do this? So I looked into it. Me and two other Northwestern guys, Schmidt and Berkowitz, and we were like, hey, like, let's just sign up for one. Like, let's sign up for one 9 months away, and like, let's just see if we can do it. So we signed up for a full Ironman in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Had never done triathlon before, and just kind of went for it. So the way I approached it, I can't speak for them, but like the way I approached it was um, signed up. It was in June 2021. Signed up in September 2020. Just kind of kept my running and cycling as was for the rest of the calendar year. And then in January, I was like, okay, I'm going to start my plan. I'm going to have a 6 month training plan. And had never like I know how to swim. I wasn't like a swim kid growing up. Like, didn't know how to put on a swim cap. Didn't know like the proper like breathing, and it was all arms, like just like really like scrappy, gross swimming.
Gritty.
Gritty
Yeah.
stuff.
Swim like a wrestler.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just fighting that water. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was just like, I did my first swim session. I was like, I think I did like 500 meters or something. Like, not all at once, by the way, mind you. And I was like, I have to swim like 2.4 miles. Like, how the hell am I going to do that? So I had to get really diligent on swimming because I needed to figure that out, both like technically and also confidence, because um in swimming, it's similar to wrestling. Like, you need to be comfortable, uncomfortable, so you can maintain that steady state heart rate and manage spikes. In swimming, like, if you're uncomfortable, your heart rate's going up, your breathing is getting harder, which subsequently like makes you more nervous, which gets your heart rate up. So it's just like a downward spiral that makes you tired really quickly. And oh, by the way, you're in like an open body of water, so like you
You
can't
might die.
exactly. So like you're swimming in pool, and then you're swimming in open water, and you have to like have so much confidence in pool so that you feel somewhat comfortable in open water. But that is like another curve of comfort in itself. So the swimming was like the hardest thing to ram. Took a lot of effort. I was swimming probably 3, 4 times a week, um, trying to prep for 20 to 40 minutes a day. Um, and then was also working in like probably 1 to 2 bicycles, 1 to 2 runs during the week. And then I had big volume sessions on the weekends where I would do like a really long ride, like a 60 to 80 mile ride on a Saturday with then like a shorter run after, like a 2 to 4 mile run. And then on Sunday, I would basically just do like a really big volume run, like a 10 to 20 mile run. And you have like kind of buildups that you're working towards as the plan progresses. And then you really taper back like probably, 2 to 3 weeks out. But yeah, I was working out, 6.5 days a week, trying to swim at least 3 times a week, running and cycling once or twice during the week, and then big volume sessions on the weekends. So
I love that
I,
you said 6.5 days. Like that's not 7 days.
yeah, that's ridiculous.
We're not going to skip over that part.
Yeah.
um,
I have two questions for you.
yeah,
One is where did you get the information to build your training program? That's like not simple programming. So I'm just curious of where you
there,
learned to
there's a business
program.
training peaks, I believe. I think it's a
Yep,
Colorado company.
it is. I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, so they have like a lot of for like any type of race. They do a really good job, and they have like if you don't know, like you have resources to go learn about swimming
Yep,
drills and all this kind of stuff.
training peaks. And then what did your body weight get to
Uh,
in
it's,
Ironman prep?
I was I was I
Yeah,
was lean. I was probably like between like 180, 190. So I was
which is still like that's huge for an Ironman competitor in
yeah,
perspective.
totally. But it was just like yeah, I was very lean. It's good times.
What'd your nutrition look like? Because I mean, at that point, you just can't get enough calories, right? And I think
I was eating a lot, yeah. Not as much as I was when I was heavyweight wrestling, but and it was different quality.
Cleaner. Yeah.
Um, have the benefit of that a little bit more now that I did in college, but um,
Not
yeah,
not when Ryan was at college though, because they just fed him fancy food.
yeah, it must have
hey,
been.
I had 2 years of slumming it, and then we got hooked up. No,
All
they
right, so you at least had the 2 years of
it was nice. It was nice. But Mike, didn't you go vegan for part of this? Were you vegan during this time?
Yeah, so I was vegan for about 4 years. So I was vegan during Ironman training, and so yeah, that was a big factor. But getting a lot of volume, like simple carbs, like good, like kind of tofu, chickpea, um, like substitute protein type stuff. Just like, yeah, the clean eating that I think a lot of us obviously know about. Like I was just trying to kind of ascribe to that as I was going through, and obviously like trying to stay hydrated and doing more on like the like for all these sessions, you have to do like electrolytes, you have to eat during sessions, you have to like really track like calorie intake based on like how far you've gone. You have to think about like um, salt capsules and like retaining what you put in, all that kind of stuff. You also need to like can't just like eat while you're doing the event so much that like your stomach hurts. So it's just like yeah, a lot of unique factors on the nutrition side that we can get into specifically if you want, but it was just like definitely a very unique experience.
No, that's super interesting. So I want to dig in like the vegan part too. Are you still vegan? And if not, what made you change? Or if so, what made you get it like be vegan?
Yeah, so I started eating fish and eggs again about uh 10 months ago.
Okay.
So I went for about 4 years. I think the goal was to find the right because I was eating a lot in college and like I'm obviously smaller than I was now, but I have had eating issues that I've been working through. Like when you're eating that way for so long, like it's hard to just turn off all those parts of
Yeah,
your brain. So
absolutely.
it's very much like a trial and error motion where like, I was trying to phase out one or two things at a time. Um, and I tried a bunch of different, I tried like keto and paleo and all that kind of stuff. And vegan was just like it had the right level of structure and restrictions that like made me feel like I was doing things right as I was going through it, but not so much so that like I had to feel like I was starving myself. And
Yeah.
like doing that coupled with the heavy cardio for the Ironman prep, it just had me in like a really happy place physically. So I was like, I'm not gonna rock the boat with this because I actually like pretty happy right now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not like frustrated with like my body image or like some of these like diet spikes and stuff like that. So like, let me just keep going with this. So the reason I started phasing the meat or the fish and eggs back in is like, I feel like I'm still doing, 85% of the vegan stuff. And I feel like I have the good foundation now, habit wise, because I did that for 4 years. Um, where I feel like it's okay to start to phase the proteins back in.
Yeah.
Because like when I go out to sushi, like I want to actually eat all the sushi. I don't want to just eat like a California or like an avocado cucumber roll,
Yeah.
like and like I like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
omelets and stuff like that. So
Yeah. That's
That
cool.
makes
So
sense.
were there a lot of injuries during training? Because obviously overuse injuries got to be
Nope.
insane with Ironman. No. Wow. Okay.
maybe a little bit. I get more injured now than I did when I was doing that.
That's crazy. Wow.
That
Okay.
is
Yeah.
crazy.
Not even a little bit, which is like nuts.
What
That
about
is amazing.
strength training during Ironman prep? Like obviously you only have so many hours in a day. Strength training probably seems
Try to
pretty
do,
low.
like, and that's maybe the half day where you
Okay.
do like
Right.
you do like you do like a little bit. You do like 20, 30 minutes of like body weight, maybe some light weights, kind of stuff. You're not going heavy volume,
Yeah.
trying to put on mass. You're trying to just give your joints opportunity to recover, but also like just activating your muscles. So I did it like probably like 1 day a week, but not like 20 to 30 minutes, like nothing crazy. Some
Yeah.
people who have more lead up and are like career people on this stuff will be more deliberate and like have heavier like training leading into their like camps, like they're like 3 or 4 months lead up. But I didn't. I was just like so behind on swimming technique. I was just like,
All
this,
in on
if
that.
I can get this part down, like I'm gonna die and I'm not gonna finish the race. So like,
Yeah.
you just focus on this.
What? So you competed in an Ironman. What do you do now for training? Do you have any aspirations of competing again? I mean, obviously there's the two
Yeah,
bikes behind you, so
Yeah.
you
So
look
I
like
Nice. Those look nice.
got the Cervelo S5, which is the Jumbo Visma team bike for the Tour de France last year. That's the bike they use. And then that's by Quintana Roo, which is the tri bike, which has like the little arm things. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so to your point, like I did a couple other half Ironmans after the full. So I've probably done 4 in total. Um, and this year I'm taking the year off in terms of like formal competitions and stuff like that. I've just been like continuing to run, continuing to bike, doing more kind of on like the 50-minute, hour long like gym sessions where like I'm hitting the airdyne for like 20 minutes and doing like pull-ups and stuff like that. So like try to work some of that back into the rotation a little bit. And also pickleball,
Pickleball's awesome.
That's awesome.
That's
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
so no, I'm about to
Also-
switch
I
subjects.
can
So
also go over a little bit if you guys need to. So like
No, yeah, we're good. We're
Okay.
good timing wise.
it's FYI.
No, I think the training for I have one last question on this. I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Mike.
Okay.
What is more miserable, Division One college wrestling season or Ironman?
ooh, that's
Hey,
nice. I
that's
like
not a tough question at all. The answer is Division One college wrestling season. Are you kidding me? Oh my god, that thing is terrible. It needs to be adjusted. Like it is
I'm with you 100%. It needs to be shortened a little bit.
like
It does.
it should be a January to April thing. Like
Yeah.
it does not need to
Wrestling
be.
is just too
Yeah.
hard of a sport to be doing for that long.
Dude, it's just like the time of year, the seasonal depression, sacrificing of holidays, like
Don't see the sun for
you know,
6
yeah,
months.
it's like, and it's just so tough on your body. Like it doesn't need to be that way. Like think about all these other college sports, like lacrosse. Like
Yeah, it's a
It's-
spring sport.
it's
Yeah.
they play 2.5 months. Season's over, and
So
like,
I'm still recovering from this because I love the fall is a beautiful time of year and my wife loves fall. But I have this thing where like when it gets cold and leaves start turning, like I get like anxious.
Yeah. It's
Because
like
it's
the
like
800
wrestling
pound
season.
gorilla over your head.
I'm like, oh, here it comes. I'm still like recovering from that. Like it's all right. I could enjoy
You got
fall.
PTSD from
Yeah.
college wrestling.
Yeah.
my wife is like super into Christmas, which is I think has been like really good actually for me
Hmm.
because
Me too.
I'm so distracted now that time of year
Yeah.
because we're so focused on Christmas stuff. And like I don't even think about it anymore, which is like it took me a while, but I got there. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely like weird first couple of years out of college.
It's funny. I
For
feel like
sure.
wrestling, you're like really close with your wrestling buddies because it's always like, it's like you're like trauma bonded through wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but,
But it's awesome.
but it, but we come back and love it. So it's funny. But Mike, changing gears a little bit, man, I wanted to talk to you a little bit how you kind of had a non-traditional career path where, you know, you majored in political science, you got a master's at UPenn, you were coaching at UPenn, you coached at Northwestern, and then you went into private equity. And I want to hear kind of what your thought process is with that, how you did that. One thing that I noticed, you know, just being around you, one of the coolest things I think you did when you came to Northwestern to coach, you like set a couple days aside and you're like, hey, I'm gonna be at this coffee shop, sign up to come, let's talk. I want to get to know you. And so everybody on the team like went and kind of got to know you. I thought that was really cool, man.
Like
That was
that.
special. Yeah, it was cool. I'd never seen that, never got to do that. And usually you kind of get to know your coach through just like the 5 minutes before practice or after practice or on a road trip. And so kind of really getting to pick your brain then, I think felt it made us feel super comfortable with you right away. And I think that probably was part of just knowing your story a little bit. Like you're so good at connecting and networking with people, and being available like that was cool. So I want to hear what you did to kind of make that switch and how you think about, you know, connecting with people. Cause I think you're very gifted at that.
Thanks, man. I'm really happy you like that because hopefully you use that with your kids or think about it. Cause like,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a unique way to just like, I always found like when I was recruiting, coaching, like it's just refreshing for a lot of high school and college kids to know that there's a person that's coaching them that obviously cares a lot about wrestling, but like that's not everything. And
Yeah.
like to just have that refreshing, like, oh wow, this person's like not just like a psycho wrestling person. I think
Yeah.
like a lot of kids, at least that I worked with when I coached for 3 years, like I felt responded really positively to that. And then I could level with them better when I was in the room. And we actually like up then had a really good partnership to help them accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. So I'm really that's cool that you like that. But yeah, so yeah, I definitely went a roundabout path to get into my current career. And the thing I would say about that is like I have so many thoughts on this topic. Um, like college is great, obviously for a lot of reasons. It gives people access to a wealth of resources and incredible opportunity if you use the experience appropriately. Problem is, a lot of folks, um, at least when I was going through, like didn't know how to use the experience appropriately. Like there are versions of going to Northwestern, right? Like you're there, you can go there, you can just kind of be there and be doing your thing on the sports team. But a lot of the broader student body population, other people who have better guidance, like recognize that there are certain steps that you need to be taking as you're going through to set yourself up for life after Northwestern. I think
Yep.
I grew up in a world where like my mom has an associate's degree, my dad didn't go to college, and like the goal was just to get there. And then like nobody had any idea what was next. And it was incumbent on me to figure that out. And I didn't feel like by the time I graduated, for nobody's fault, like I just didn't feel like I really had that I didn't have that guidance and navigate my experience appropriately in undergrad to just be like really smoothly set up that next leg of the journey. So I needed more time because my brain was so, as we talked about earlier, like so hardwired to just win the NCAA tournament that like there were so many other things I needed to scale up on for broader life that like I just couldn't do in a short period of time. So I just needed to buy myself some more time to like figure out this next phase of the journey. So coaching was a great opportunity for me to do that because I think it pushed me in many ways to develop new skills that have become super important in my current career. And also because I was a graduate student, I got opportunities to ingratiate myself in the Penn academic community and also the Penn network, and started to just understand like what networking is, why people do it, how to do it well. And I just learned a lot in having conversations with a variety of people, not just like squarely in wrestling world, but also just more broadly, do know anything about wrestling, right? Um, so the short answer is like it took like it didn't happen overnight. It took a really long time. It was hard, and it required a lot of conversations, a lot of at bats, and a lot of failures. Because I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer because my parents were like, "You should be a doctor or a lawyer," and I wasn't good at science. So, like, I did political science because I was going towards law. I did this graduate program at Penn because I thought it set me up nicely for like a law application and eventual, path toward being a lawyer. I didn't really like know if I wanted to do that. So um, I had all these conversations. I learned from people. I talked to people in the Wharton School, and like just started to unearth like how this business ecosystem is built, what folks typically look for in terms of entry points into like business world, and more specifically like this finance ecosystem. And a lot of the kids who were graduating from undergraduate Wharton or graduate Wharton um, had a couple of different like the common denominator was, from my perspective, like a couple things. They all were really they all were really intrigued by eventually like getting into these investing roles, where they were either doing venture capital, they were doing growth equity, they were doing private equity. I didn't know what any of those things were, so I worked really hard to like talk to people and read about like what these things are, why people like them so much, and yeah, like they are. It's a really cool industry, and I can talk about that in a little bit. But like, um, but I found out that's where a lot of people wanted to go. And I thought about, okay, well, like, how are they getting there? And the common like pathways were like certain roles like banking, consulting, working at a company and like a corporate finance team or like a strategy team or something, working in business development, just like learning about how a company works. And then once you get some of that experience, then you can kind of pathway over to the buy side. Um, so that was like some of the discovery I was doing, talking to people. Um, but ultimately, like I was doing a lot of trial and error and like at bats and like trying to figure out one of those pathways. And then I had some really, fortunate conversations with folks at my current firm um, who were working at portfolio companies, introduced me to people on the investment team. They were doing recruiting. So I went through their recruiting process, and basically got an opportunity to join at like an entry level on the investment team. And I've been there for about 6 years. So I was not like, and now I work like, now I recruit kids out of college and work with analyst recruiting and stuff like that, intern programs. And there is like a lot of common traits that people who want to work in finance have. And I definitely didn't have any of those when I started, but I had a lot of persistence and I figured out the like how the industry mold works. I was really curious. And when I interviewed, I assume the like individual desire to like figure this out. So the high level familiarity with like how it all came together, and then like a lot of my accolades in my previous life and how I contextualize that to the person I spoke to, I think all came together to the point where they were like, this kid's kind of unique. Like, let's give him a shot and like see what happens. So I was kind of like going all over the place. Hopefully that was helpful, but
No, absolutely.
a little bit of how I think about it. But I think it's like I've talked to like a lot of people in wrestling worlds who have reached out to me like one off that you guys probably don't even know about, and they asked me this question that you just asked me, and a lot of them don't want to hear like the answer is like it's hard, it
Yeah.
takes time, and it's not straightforward. And as long as you're like open to that, and you wake up every day and you have like the like desire to like come through on the other side and like find that next identity for yourself, like it will happen. And you just have to like keep that like hunger, and like feed that with knowledge and progress every single day so that you just like get to where you want to be. Because I'm so happy with how things turned out. Like I'm really lucky, but a lot of it is because of like the stuff I did as an athlete. The 3 years of networking and just like learning and adjusting how I talk about stuff to just be tooled at the right moment to have this conversation to get this opportunity. So just try to encourage people that like you can do it, and it's just like you don't want to hear the answer, but like it just takes time and like iteration and like just gotta figure it out.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that's great advice. It's a super unique and cool story. And I think um, you're the type of person that figures out whatever you want to do. And so just being persistent and putting your head down and figuring it out. Um, it's it's so it's such a cool path and unique attribute that I think you have, and that goes for Ironmans, that goes for wrestling, that goes for your career. But that's awesome. I think it's a great place to end it. Unless Max, you got anything else question
No,
wise?
just really appreciate talking to you. You have an awesome perspective. You're a Renaissance man. Learned a lot today. Thank you.
Mike, you're the man. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it.